Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure review. Today we are going to jump into the time machine and travel way back to 2015 as we look at this Mattel Batman vs. Superman Grapnel Blast Batman. So this figure was to tie in with the big full-length feature Batman vs. Superman when the movie came out, I think like 7 years ago. One thing you'll notice with this action figure is that it's not highly articulated. This is not in the same league as like a Mattel DC Classics action figure. This is much more of a budget toy aimed at kids, and like here it says suggested for ages 3 and up. So we're going to take a look at this, and for me it's a nice trip down memory lane. I have some fond memories of these toys, and I think they're awesome. One thing I loved about this action figure when it first came out was the package design. You know, I think from a marketing point of view, this kind of like checked all the boxes. For one, you had a beautiful image here of Ben Affleck as Batman and Henry Cavill as Superman. You have the awesome Batman and Superman logo. And this figure, for me, it's kind of like, it's in line with the much more iconic Batman, with the gray and the black. And he came with his giant grapple gun, which this thing doesn't really function at all. It doesn't shoot a projectile. There's no missile. It's not spring-loaded. It's just kind of more so like an accessory, just to give, the action figure. On the back, nice photo of the figure, but it's kind of weird because this figure almost looks very different than what you're getting over here. This looks, to be fair, this looks awesome, but then when you look at the back, this figure looks a little bit different. The plastic quality looks a lot shinier. It looks like it's almost like made of a different plastic altogether. And it's kind of odd because here, like, you have the texture on the bat emblem, but over here it doesn't have a texture at all. It's completely smooth and, a smooth surface. The sculpting is very different also. So it's, in some ways, this might have been like an early prototype. It's possible. Other figures in the line, there was Shield Clash Superman, Wonder Woman, and a Gauntlet Assault Batman. Now, you can tell that these, at the time, even now, a lot of these action figures are clearly aimed at boys. They give us multiple versions of Batman and Superman, yet they only give you the one Wonder Woman. For like Superman, it's Shield Clash Superman. For Batman, it's Gauntlet Assault Batman, or it's Grapnel Blast Batman. It kind of like bothered me a little that, they just gave us the one Wonder Woman. It's like, how come they couldn't give us like a variation on her also? It'd be nice to like get her with like different accessories other than just the sword and shield. But, just to be fair, if you wanted the strictly iconic versions of the characters like you saw in the movie, there's nothing wrong with us getting this. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this action figure, and I'm not going to unbox it because I do have one loose in hand. So we're going to take a look at this guy. Alright, so this is a fun action figure. It's not like in line with Mattel's other action figures like the DC Classics or DC Universe. This is much smaller than those figures. This guy probably stands in, if I had to guess, maybe somewhere around 6 inches. And yeah, he's a little bit about 6 inches, which sounds kind of reasonable until you actually stand him next to like a Marvel Legends or a DC Classics. Then you kind of realize that it's a much smaller figure. The scale is just a little bit different. It's kind of tweaked down, to accommodate this budget figure. And it's budget in every sense of the word. For one, like I pointed out earlier, he's not highly articulated at all. His head just kind of rotates. His arms rotate also, but they don't go out. There's no bicep cut. It just bends at the elbow and swivels. There's no wrist articulation. There's no articulation at the forearm. I don't think this guy even swivels at the waist. And then his legs just kick up and his knees bend. That's the extent of his articulation. So it's a very basic action figure, and when you handle it, it feels like it's meant for a child. It's a lot more durable. the cape is not made of a cloth material. It's kind of like this very thin vinyl, which in theory sounds good, but the only bad thing with this is that it gets marred and creases really easily. Like, you know, if you don't handle this correctly, or if this is like this left in a weird position, you'll get all these kind of like crease marks and folds. Luckily for me, this one, I always kept this one flat on his back so it wouldn't get all messed up. Ideally, I think a cloth cape would be nice in this situation, because there's something really weird and generic about this. But at the same time, you know, this is aimed at kids. It's not aimed at, you know, older collectors. But that's not to take anything away from it. I think it's a great figure. It's nice. You know, it's not going to win any awards. If you have little ones, this is the kind of figure you hand them. And it's just kind of shows you how far action figure engineering has come, you know, since over the last 7 years. Like, I know this is an unfair example, but, you know, it's kind of, you know, we've made this huge jump, you know, like within 7 years. Like, here's a Mattel Batman action figure right here, and then here's a McFarlane one, you know, like 7 years later. You know, there's so much going on in terms of like what an action figure could do nowadays and the way they're presented. But for the most part, you know, stuff like this, you know, I know a lot of like serious collectors kind of frown upon the budget stuff. But, you know, the whole reason why these things kind of exist is because these are toys. You know, these are meant for kids to play with. And as kids grow older, you know, if they're very fond of their superheroes and they want more premium things, you know, as they grow into an adult, you know, they might start looking at stuff like this. But this is the kind of stuff that, you know, little kids play with when they're younger. You know, they go on adventures with Batman. You know, if a kid's like going on vacation or on a road trip, this is the kind of toy they keep with them in the back seat and imagine all sorts of crazy adventures. So, I mean, these kind of toys do serve a purpose. And if you're like me, you know, if you're a collector of, you know, all things Batman in general, you're not really going to care sometimes whether or not a figure can move, you know, a million different ways. Sometimes you just want a cool display piece, or you want something that kind of reminds you of your childhood. I think that's part of my attraction to these budget figures. You know, for me, it's like anytime I handle a figure like this, you know, for me, this is a much more relatable than something like this. You know, I don't have any memories of playing with a toy this intricate and this detailed and this articulated. This is something that like was introduced to me like you know, years ago when I was in college. You know, when I was in college, we were introduced to these higher level of action figures, you know, much like the Marvel Legends. But growing up, you know, these were the kind of toys I was accustomed to handling. And, you know, there's value in this. You know, it's more so based on nostalgia, but it's still a nice product, especially coming from Mattel. You know, Mattel, even with their lower priced figures, they do provide with, you know, nice quality most of the time. You know, there's not going to be a whole lot of issues with it. And, you know, they're durable, they're sculpted well. So yeah, that's pretty much sums up this review. If I had to rate this guy on a scale of 1 to 10, an easy 6. And that's not a bad thing. You know, for what it is and for its price point, I think it's decent. You know, this is something you might find at like a flea market or at a comic book convention or at a collectible toy store. And nowadays, Spin Master has the license on kind of like these budget Batman figures. And their figures kind of range, I think, more so in the either 12-inch scale or the smaller 4-inch scale. I think the last time we had a 6-inch or 5-inch scale Batman figure might have been with Mattel when they did the Batman Missions line a few years ago. And if you want something that's along like this but a little bit more recent, yeah, go hunt down that Mattel Batman Missions line. They had some really cool figures. More recently, I reviewed a Mr. Freeze from that line, and that's awesome. That's a great figure. There's a really great rendition of Robin that I like a lot. And I don't know, it's just cool. Batman's one of those figures that you're always going to find at the stores. He's kind of like evergreen. You know, he's always going to be around. Alright, so with that being said, let's wrap this one up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber or viewer, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. Alright, later.